Now, is there anyone want to say anything this week? And have you got anything to tell us, right? Before you start, right, I'm going to go through a list of things. You don't talk about your knickers. You don't talk about your washing machine. You don't talk about your car. Other than that, you can talk about no, don't do bras either, right? Other than that, you can talk about it.
Oh well, that's nothing then. I got nothing to talk about. No, I haven't got anything. Oh, I did notice that on the telly today, they're calling the Irish Sea the Celtic Sea.
Bollocks. What?
As far as business goes, the Celtic Sea. Yeah, because they've got
Hang on, hang on,
Swansea.
hang on. Stop,
Swansea is going
stop.
to be no. Swansea's going to be the main port for the Celtic Sea. Yeah,
Who's decided this?
pardon?
He calls that a long time. You look at any
It
chart.
was on. It was on the news. They were talking about industry and like the economy after the budget. Yes, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's been called that a long time. If you look at any nautical chart, it's the Celtic Sea.
Ah,
For ages.
yeah.
Yeah, but to me, I don't want to do that. I want to call it the Irish Sea, so shut up.
Well, you can call it whatever you like.
Yeah, exactly. I can go, Anne, stop interfering with me.
I thought I'd wind you up.
Not really.
You wound me up.
I know you don't need winding up, but she did say that because it's a business term. They're talking about, Swansea being upgraded to.
Yeah, have you been to Swansea recently? Is a bomb dropped on it? No. But actually, no, actually, Swansea's a lot nicer than Cardiff, to be honest with you. Now, I got to be honest with you. And it's got a better, and it's got a better football team and a rugby team as well. So there you go, to keep everybody inclusive, right?
Yeah, but apart from that, I've been, I just watch a bit of this and that on the TV, and just think,
and that's good, right?
Archaeology, archaeology, and yeah, no, that's all I got to say, really.
Apparently, Alice Roberts has been down in Lantwick Major. We don't talk about that, right? Anything you want to say, Richard?
No, nothing for me. Nothing new.
He's doing an interesting project about the churches in the Vale of Glamorgan.
Yes.
And how widespread they are.
Yeah, yeah. He is. Well, we'll tell you. Hopefully,
that's a work in progress.
That's a work in progress. Yeah. Look, yeah. Cool. Talking about blow up rubber dolls, Goff.
Happy Diwali.
Happy Diwali. Yeah, cool.
The discovery of the Guatemalan main city.
Oh.
On the news, now, which I sent you on.
Yes.
That was very interesting, wasn't it? It was.
Yes, and actually, we might do it. Yeah, again, Anne, calm down. Good. They've hang on a minute. We last night we had this big bloody row. Apparently they've got a LiDAR one that's been found in Mexico as well.
Okay.
And also, yeah, you saw that. So we got one in Guatemala, we got one in Mexico, right?
There's one in the Celtic. Well,
you can. And the tomb has also been found in Guatemala as well, right? With a nice little jade mask.
I say it's Guatemala. I might be wrong. It may be the same one as the Mexican one. I don't know.
Yeah, I knew that. I knew this woman called Jade once, so she definitely had a mask. Right. God, can I ask you just something, right? You were talking. What?
Is it personal?
Well, yeah, it's just it's between you and me, but we're gonna.
No, I never have had it. No.
Well, I've had the clap once, and I'm not proud of it, but that's not what I'm asking you, right? Right. What I was going to ask, right? Peak Performance. It closed a year ago, did it?
No, it closed last month. The end of last month.
Ah, right. How long was he planning to sell it then?
Oh, about a year ago, it went on the market.
Yeah, but to you, how long had been talking about it?
Oh, since he had his heart attack 2 years ago.
Ah, right, yeah, yeah.
And
yeah,
when
yeah.
you didn't come to get an MOT anymore, that was the end of it, really. You know.
What is he? Did you say he's selling his house?
No, Anne, keep up, shut up, just don't go into
No, ask
conversation.
Pat. Come on, ask Pat. She's having a
Yeah.
tea.
Yeah, all right, we're going to ask Pat. Anything from you, Pat?
Well, remember we used to talk about Troy and all the layers that what's his name dug through, and
Heinrich Schliemann, yeah.
yep, that's it. And they've got new people there, and they've identified 9 layers, and they're trying to find a layer that had the Trojan War because they want to prove that the Trojan War was at this place, this location. So this is an aerial
Mount
shot.
Hisarlik. Yeah, Mount Hisarlik, yeah.
Yeah, so it was a work in progress. Yeah, so
There's nothing wrong with a work in progress. There's nothing wrong with a bit of Heinrich Schliemann. But under Dolphalt's working with Heinrich Schliemann in 1881, they did actually find the proper layer. So I don't know why they're trying to find it again.
yeah, well, I don't know. They wanted more, fighting tools or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's true.
So,
True. Cool. Talking about blow up rubber dolls, Henry.
Oh,
Oh,
Henry.
greetings to you.
Yeah, greetings.
Did you
Right,
did you get that? Did you get the phone
Yeah.
call yet from Alice?
No, I did. Look, me and Alison. Look, I'm a Neil Oliver person, right? So anyway, me and Neil Oliver are like that, and there's me on top. See, we're best of mates. Right, tell us what's been going on in Lantwick Major. Then just give us a feel of that. I want to get straight into the undies and just tell us a little bit.
They're looking to raise £500,000 to restore the church, but in the same frame, it looks as though they're doing some excavation work in Globe Field, which I think is part of the BBC Big Dig.
Oh.
Part of Alice Roberts, yeah.
So they're looking. What they're trying to trace is the original college structure, which they believe is wood anyway, so it won't be there because it's
where St. Patrick went.
Yeah,
And shut up!
St. David.
And St. David. And St. Ilted.
Well, they weren't saints when they went there, were they? Oh,
No.
by the way, I'm St. Ilted. Oh, yeah, that's good. Brilliant. I'm St. Patrick. Top of the world, you say. No, they weren't like that, Anne. Right? They're trying to find this thing, right? And can you stop interfering with me?
Yes,
I've had this. I've had all this for all my life. Right? Anything else from you, Henry?
No, that's it. I think you just need to crack on.
Do you know, I'll be bloody pleased when we have a break. I've been having to put up with this for a whole hour so far, right? All this. Do you know what, right? I could do better things in my life, like running around the field naked, but no, I've got to stand here talking to you. By the way, there's a few of you who haven't paid your money, right? I know some of you have, right? But the rest of you, make sure you pay your money, your 50 quid for the next 2 months. Otherwise, I'll send the guys over there, right? Including a guy from Alan who used to work for Peak Performance, who was good at getting money out of people, including Alan Carnes. Other than that, what we're going to do, and that's true, isn't it, Goff?
Yeah. No VAT.
Yeah. No, don't. Do you charge VAT on it? No, I don't. Yeah, that's right. We haven't heard anything about Alan Khan since, have we? Right. Anyway, what we got to do, I want to share. I want to do this LiDAR bit, right, for Guatemala, right? We're just going to do not Guatemala, freaking Mexico, whatever it bloody is, right? So what we're going to do, if we type in Mexico, we're going to do in the Mexican one, LiDAR, that's it, job done. It was there. Researchers, right? Which one's the Guardian one? Oh, flipping it, where's the Guardian one? Oh, there, Guardian, job done, sorted. So what we did last night, no, they haven't found that. That's been found ages ago, right? But what it is, right? They've done a LiDAR, and they're basically, that's high visual LiDAR, right? And you can basically, they found, right, the story is they've been trying, right, the story is in 2013, somebody flew over the area and did a LiDAR survey, right? So LiDAR survey, the way LiDAR survey works is slightly different to aerial photography. It takes photographs of solid structures, right? So it flies over a landscape, right? And you've got trees everywhere, right? It ignores the trees and the photographs high visuals of actually the landscape below the trees. That's how LiDAR works, right? And what they and basically it was like part of a geological survey thing, you know, a part of trying to work out how many trees were there and all the rest of it. People ignored the humps and bumps, and then somebody come along and said, "Look at those humps and bumps. That is a city." And it turned out that as they were starting to look at the high visuals, right, of 2013. See, I remember this stuff. As they were looking at the high, oh, there it is. You see that there? Yeah. As they were looking at the high visuals, they actually found this great city, right? With water systems, with ball courts, a massive statue of Lloyd George, which was 56 foot high, right? Massive courts, you know, pyramids, loads of stuff, right? And what it is, right? Look at this. Look at that. Oh, I live in this. So what we did, right? There's the tropical rainforest, right? And what it is, they if you do this, this is so good, Goff. Look at that. And there it is revealed. That's the LiDAR. That's the aerial photography. Look at that. It's great, isn't it? So what they did, as you can see, you can't see any temples, right? Nothing, right? You can't see the 50-foot statue of Lloyd George through the trees. But now when you put that back, there's his statue. You can see this entire landscape, right, of archaeology, and it's so great. And it's with all these things, right? This is the type, and they didn't know it was there. They had no idea. It's just like I'm wandering down a street one day. There was a load of trees, and I kept walking, and there was nothing else there. They couldn't find it. But
Well,
then,
it
and
is
shut up, I am
brilliant.
finished. And shut up. And what they then did, Anne, right? They started. They went down on the ground, right, and they got there with their doodahs, right. And they started cutting through, right, and they found that what they thought were temples were indeed temples, Anne. Right, Anne, you can now say something. Go for it.
I said it is brilliant because when we went LiDAR looking, so you know, we're looking for the remains of
Mounds.
looking for the remains of you know, what was in Wentwood Forest, what was there before the forest.
Yeah.
We couldn't do it because it was covered in ferns and shrubbery. So this
But
is obviously from an aeroplane,
yes.
whereas, you know, yeah, it's
But
great.
Anne,
It cut through the trees and the ferns.
and can you let me say something? Right. Now, I don't know what I was going to say now. I really don't. All right, Anne, you know when you went on that survey with Katie, right? Katie. We like Katie. She was really nice, sweet girl. She shouldn't have been working with me. But anyway, Katie, right? She actually had LiDAR images of the landscape.
That's
And
right.
what that's what she wanted to do, was she wanted to show the LiDAR landscape, right?
That's
And
right,
you were in amongst it all.
yeah.
Do you know,
It was
you
all
were there.
covered in shrubbery, so we couldn't see
Yeah, right.
anything. So
That's
we like
true.
that, you know. But anyway, that's great.
Yeah, that's true. Right. Anyway, I've lost the will to live. I really have. You know, I just right, okay. Right. The only other thing I want to show you, right, is this tomb that's been found in Guatemala, right? Guatemalan tomb. So good, it's there. Archaeologists find Guatemalan tombs. We'll just show you the images, right? Because we've got to get on with what we're supposed to be getting on with. And what they found, right? Where's these at? Right, look at that there. Oh, Anne, don't that look gorgeous, Anne? They found a jade skull in a
Mm,
tomb that hadn't
mm.
been interfered with.
Oh, oh dear.
Right? What? What do you mean, oh dear? What are you on about? But it's a good thing, Anne, that it hasn't been interfered with. Do you know what I mean?
Mm,
If it had been interfered with, Anne, we wouldn't find anything. It's the whole point.
mm.
Anyway, they're finding all these beautiful things. I'll just show you one more image and we'll crack on. Right. There's that stuff, perfectly preserved stuff that they found in a tomb. And they found a human female that had been incised. Look at that mask, Anne. Don't that
Oh,
look gorgeous? Look into the eyes of the dead.
oh,
And by the way, Anne, somebody's put on YouTube that they think you're very sexy.
oh, oh.
And there's a bone, a human femur, Anne, right, that has actually been carved into. You can see all the symbols. That's a human femur. And Anne, yes, the person had to be dead for that to be carved into the bone.
Yes, I do
Yeah,
agree. I do
yeah.
agree.
I'm glad you agree, Anne. Right, it's fine. Good. What we're going to do now, Anne, please. Right, good. Anne, you can do a running commentary onto the next bit as long as I can as long as you can let me say something, Anne. I don't mind. Right, so what we're going to do, we're going to get onto the images, and hopefully, I will not have lost the will to live. Right, and yeah. Do you know what? I've been playing roles in films, a patient in a mental asylum, right? And apparently, I was very good at it.
Well, I think you're too noisy.
I have to be bloody noisy because I wouldn't have a word in edgeways, would I? Right,
Yeah.
right. So we got those images. We're going to look at the scatness stuff, right? And then hopefully, right, if I can work out what the hell I'm doing a minute, right? Oh yes. What I was going to do with scatness, I was going to like take us to the Roman level, right? And then I was going to do some text. And now the point is with scatness is that our site that is in Shetland, they found lots of Roman archaeology, right? And what we do, we look at this texts, we look at the images, we look at some text for the Roman archaeology, right? And then we do the comparison for scatness and this Roman site where Goff got a bit confused where it was the other week, the Ditches site, which is north of Cirencester, Goff, right? And then I ask you a question at the end, and the question at the end is, right, Anne, why were Brocks so tall? Why were they so astronomically tall? Some were up to 15 meters tall. And we actually had this, Anne, right? Do you know, right, that the tallest structure remaining in Britain, right, that was built um before say 1066, the tallest remaining structure built by human hands in Britain is actually this broch at Moosa in Shetland, built by our Iron Age ancestors, and it's half a meter to a meter taller than the Roman lighthouse, which is found at Dover, which is 12.5 meters in height. So basically, the Iron Age people get the up on the Romans. Isn't that so good, Anne? Thank you. Why has everyone gone quiet? Good. Anyway, so I hope you're still there and you haven't left me and I'm just talking to myself. Right. Anne, say something.
Well,
That's enough. And that's enough. That's fine. We know you're there, right? So the one thing I want to do is just basically say, look, we've been looking at Scatness site. We know where it is in Shetland, right? So job done. And the one thing is that tower there, even though the Broch at Scatness is nowhere near as big as the one at Musa, which is just up the coast, right? Which is on an island, the island of Musa, right? It's still pretty tall. Now, one of the points is to try and get an idea of what we're talking about is that seeing a building that was seeing a building that's 4, 5, 6 meters tall, right? A building like Musa, which is 15, 16 meters tall when it was standing, and even today it's 13 meters tall, right? 13.5 or whatever, right? These would be the tallest structures that Iron Age people would have ever have seen in Britain, ever. Goff likes me saying that, ever, right? Up until the Romans started building things, right? Even though the Romans built things which were taller than some of these Brock-like structures in Scotland, right? They didn't survive that height, where the Brocks in some places did. So up there for the Iron Age people, right? And what we've got to say is that these people were responsible in creating incredibly amazing things in the Iron Age, right? As they had been before. I may be reminded, Anne, if you do say that Silbury Hill is also a human man-made artifact, except we're going to ignore Silbury Hill because it's made of earth, right? Yeah, well done, Anne. And these are actually all made of stone, stone on top of a stone. Ooh, it's all in movement, right? So that is a reconstruction, Anne, of what the village of Scatness looked like, right? And just think, these people move straight into the Roman era, which is now at this stage by about AD 100, but they're moving into the Roman era under their terms because the Romans don't conquer don't conquer Shetland, right? And they don't conquer Orkney, but there are links between this site and the Roman world. And one thing we can say, Anne, now is that these people had the skills to smelt iron, copper, bronze. They even had pottery. They had everything, right? And it might be that some of the technology that these people are creating, they're selling to the Roman peoples down in the south. Isn't that one for the Iron Age people against the Romans? Anne, it's so good. And don't get so excited, Anne, right? I'm allowed to get excited, but not you. Because if you get too excited, we might need to rush you into hospital. I know you're 60, but don't get upset about it, right? So anyway, what we've got is and would you agree, right? Finding a complete, well, they've got partial remains, but getting, right? And listen, Anne, you've got to answer the question in a minute, right? Would items like this, which is a glass bowl, which is very similar to the remains found of a glass bowl of scatness, would they have been able to get something like this from, say, Paris all the way to Shetland if they'd nicked it without breaking it? The answer is no. Well done, Anne, for that answer. Right. So the point is, the only way these items could have got to Shetland is because they traded them, because they're very special. Isn't that right, Anne? Good. Yeah. See, she's agreeing with me. I'm good. I'm glad. When Anne agrees with me, right, she don't say anything. Right. It's good. So the point is that we got loads of Roman artifacts at the site of Scatness. But again, it doesn't mean to say the Romans lived there, but it means to say that there's a massive exchange of cultural ideas, massive exchange of these people who actually had technologies that outclassed anything that the Romans actually ever spoke about. Now, the Romans didn't talk about these Brock-like structures. There's nothing in it in any of the works of Julius Caesar and Tacitus or any works of Agricola. But these buildings did exist, and we still obviously got the remains of them with us today. Now, do you know, if you've read any of my books? I know Goff has read my Romans in South Wales version 1, 2, and 3 from front to back many times. And what he's come, well done, Goff. You reminded me. What we've got in the book, we've got blue beads, right? And I love talking about blue beads. Blue beads is a bit of evidence that we actually find on lots of Roman sites across Britain. But they found blue beads. Guess where, Anne? Scatness. It's amazing, isn't it? So, but these blue beads and the color of the blue beads, is the color come about from ores that have come about from lapis lazuli, for example. And when that's ground down, it gives it sort of like blue color to these wonderful beads. Now, I used to have somebody that I was very close to once, and I actually went out of my way to buy some Roman some jewelry made out of Roman glass, because there's loads of Roman blue glass found in Israel and northern Egypt, because that's where it actually originated. We actually find Roman blue beads at Scatness, which is very, very special. But these are some of the items which would have travelled thousands of miles to get to Scatness. Isn't that absolutely amazing? Well done. So what we've got, I know I've shown you these items, but I'm going into a little bit more detail. So finding the top of this glass bowl, these are the same items which have been found at that Roman site that we're going to talk about. The Roman site at the Ditches, which is the site that I've mentioned, which is the one that we're going to do a bit of comparison with, the Roman villa site, which is north of Cirencester, right? So you're thinking that hundreds and hundreds of miles apart, 700 odd miles apart, but they're finding similar artifacts. The site in Scatness is typically an Iron Age site that was in existence at the same time of Roman rule in the south, but similar objects, and that's really interesting, right? And again, I know these are fragmentary bits, right? But these were once part of the complete real deal that would have been transported all the way to these sites in Orkney and Shetland, right? Here's a little bit of a red herring. There's place names in Orkney, right? Like Agricola Field. There's place names of places in Orkney which are quite strange. And you're thinking, why have they got these strange place names, right? Which are associated with the Romans. The Romans never ever really got to Orkney. But then again, this is Shetland. And you're thinking, well, there's all these wonderful exchange of objects that we find across these places. And it is telling us something even more important than just actually finding the artifacts. These people did have the technology to blow glass. They did have the technology at Scatness to actually make glass in molds. But all the glass styles and forms that we're actually seeing are forms of glass that you can clearly see on the continent, right? But who's to say that they didn't heat up the glass in a small crucible and just pour it in a mold? They could have, right? But the objects that we're finding are not made locally, but they had the technology to make these items locally. We've got all the molds, we've got the furnace evidence, we've got the artifacts made on site. So that's amazing. And what I'm trying to get at, right, is that what we do in archaeology, we find these things and we say, right, they couldn't have made these things, but they could have, right? And one of the things that we need to do is look at archaeological work, and where we find artifacts, we always say, right, they couldn't have done that. Yeah, they must have come from somewhere else, right? For example, when archaeologists started working at Colchester, 150 odd years ago, and they started looking at the Roman archaeology, they started coming across a Roman Samian ware, right? And they said, right, that's from France, right? And the Roman Samian ware, that's from France. And it turned out that some of that Roman Samian ware was copies, bootleg copies that were actually made at Colchester. So we shouldn't always assume these things. It's like going down the street, seeing a skinhead, right? And then you're thinking, right, it's not a nice person. And then they take off their coat and they got a dog collar, right? So we can't always assume everything is as black and white in history and archaeology as meets the eye. Now, so what we've got another bit of a multi bangled fragment, right? And again, these are part of our objects that have ended up in Scatness, very delicate objects. Glass is very delicate stuff. And it must have been traded there. It wasn't stuff that was nicked from Joe Blogg somewhere in England, right? Because when you nick things get broken, right? Not that I've got experience of that. But when I broke into Richard's house and I nicked his computer, I accidentally broke the screen on his computer but if Richard had given me the computer, it would have been intact, right? So that's the point we're actually making, right? And Richard's going to go to the police with this evidence and me nicking his computer, but it's too late now because it's already gone out live. But there you go. This is another multicolored bangle fragment, and again, they did have the technology, but these are all trade items. But then again, am I assuming too much? Maybe one or two of these artifacts could have actually been made on site. Could have been, right? We've got to test some of this stuff. Now, So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to these end of these little images, and then we're going to take a break because I'm well aware that Pat needs to go to bed by 9:30, right? And we don't want to upset her sleeping patterns. And no, I was meant to be acting tonight on a film where I got murdered, right? But unfortunately, I wasn't able to be on that film. They got somebody else who was far better at being murdered than me. But don't worry about it. Might be next week. But anyway, these objects themselves, we've got the ones on the one on the left, and we've got the panannular brooch. They're perfectly capable of making these things at the site. Maybe one day we might find a mold of a fibula brooch somewhere in Shetland. It might be the mold that was used to make this. But for the time being, we believe that this fibula brooch was probably made somewhere in southern England. But the one on the right is known as a panannular brooch. It's basically a circle with a pin across it, which was perfectly good for a cloak, right? And again, finding these artifacts, it's the presumption that all these artifacts were actually trade items that were taken to Shetland. Equally, what we've got to do, we've got to start looking at Roman stuff, found Roman stuff found on Roman sites, and we've got to start looking at these things and thinking, well, if they've got the technology to make these things in Shetland, how do we know that everything on the Roman sites in the south was actually made in the south? Some of it could have actually been made in places as far remote from Roman era Britain as Shetland itself. This is what the evidence is telling us, right? That is a nice little bit of an image of a fibula brooch, right? And these were typical items that basically fibula brooch, if you can see, basically, have we got another image? There we go, a side an image where you've got the spring, right? And it goes into the lock bit at the bottom. So there we go. That fibula brooch, you would have had two fibula brooches. So if you think about that, sort of side on, right, horizontally, so you'd have had two of these. You'd have had a cloak, right? And you'd have had one on the left and the right, and between that you'd have a little bit of a chain, right? These would have been connected to the cloak, right? And the little bit of a chain in between would have kept them together. And how do we know that there's a little bit of a chain in between? Well, if you look at the images coming up, we know that these people had chains as well, right? I'm not saying the same chain for something like this. It's probably more like a silver chain or something like that, or something else. But oh, hang on a minute. There we go, chain. But what we're going to do is say something else now, right? And there's the pin. There you go. What I'd like to do is iron shears. Now, when I was doing a film some months back, which I can't even mention the name of yet, because until they've actually finished filming, then I'll tell you all about it, and I'll tell you all my ins and outs of shearing sheep, right? But Hugh Bonneville Carter was on the film. There you go. So that itself, not Alice Roberts Henry. I don't work with amateurs like that. But anyway, the point is when you think about it, these shears are shears found on this site at Scatness. These are exactly the same shear design that we actually find at a site that's an earlier in time, known as Must Farm, Peterborough. And you're thinking, well, this design is the same. And you know what, Anne? This design of shears is exactly the same shears that I sheared my sheep with on the film a few months ago, right? Exactly the same design. So you're thinking, right, okay, these people use shears in Scatness, which is exactly the same design as the shears that were used by Roman era farmers, say, for example, near Cirencester or South Wales or Long Hadrian's Wall, right? Who's to say where these shears were made? Maybe these shears are actually locally made, and maybe a pair of shears that you might find in an excavation in London could have actually come from Shetland. Who's to say? Because these things haven't all been tested, and it's that presumption, isn't it? Right? You know, I presume that Anne deeply loves me, and she told me that she deeply loves me. But it's always that presumption that you're always going to be right, right? Sometimes you might be wrong. In the evidence, right, of the archaeology, you think, right, these can't have been made by people in Shetland, right? And then you find molds, and you're thinking, oh yeah, they were made by people in Shetland. But when you're in the south, it's always that the Romans produced these things, when in fact these people could have produced them for the Romans. Do you see what I'm trying to get at? We always presume these things. We always think, and there's a movement in black archaeology, if you want to call it that, there's a movement in black circles in archaeology where people are starting to say, oh, actually, there was no such thing as Roman era Britain, right? The Romans never ever came to Britain, which is absolute nonsense. But I think the point that they're actually trying to make is that we make out that the Romans gave us all of this technology, and they didn't.
No.
Most of this technology was already here. The Romans actually came over here and just basically tweaked it a little bit. That's all the Romans did. They tweaked civilization in Britain. And I'll go back to that statement. If there was never ever a Roman invasion into Britain, we would still be where we are today. We didn't need the Romans to be where we are today, because the Irish didn't need the Romans, did they, Henry? Exactly. That's my
No.
point. And the people in the Isle of Man and up a boat.
Yes.
Have you ever been to up a boat? There's just a pub.
Yes.
And a few houses. Right. Anyway. Oh, actually, do you know what? It's oh yeah, what we'll do, hang on, see more images. If I got a naked photograph of Kylie Minogue, then we'll stop. Oh, we'll just do these images. Right. Right. So basically, there we go, a double linked chain. Right. Now you're thinking that the Romans, when, say for example, Anne, right, if you found this on a Roman site, right, Anne, yeah, you see my point now. If you find this on a Roman site, you would say it was made by the Romans, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
This
I
was found on,
suppose.
this was found on an Iron Age site, right? And you might say, oh, they didn't have the technology to make this, right? But they did. So if you look at it the other way, who's to say the Roman stuff found on a Roman site was actually made by the Romans in the first place, when the Iron Age people were equally able to make these things? So it's always the presumption as evidence, which you're just ignoring, right? So again, double linked chain. If you oh, right, what we're going to do, have anyone ever seen my chainmail shirt, right? I'm going to go and get it. Right, it's hanging up. Or do I just use? Oh, right, hang on a minute. You're gonna get better chainmail there. All right, no, I don't want to do. I'll just go and get my chainmail shirt a minute. Hang on a minute. I'm probably just the captain. Chainmail shirt, chainmail shirt. Hang on a minute. There it is. I'm just gonna get my chainmail shirt, folks.
That's not Roman.
Hang on a minute. This
Oh,
isn't
Iron
bloody
Age.
Anne, can you stop interfering? I've gone out my way to get my chainmail, sir, and you're chucking things in there to guess what I'm about to say. Right? What I'm going to say, right? Okay, what we're going to do, we're going to come off this screen, Anne, and we're going to show my chainmail shirt, right? I'm not going to take all my clothes off to show you my chainmail shirt, but look at that there. That is a chainmail shirt. Isn't that so amazing, right? Now, it's said, oh, look at Goff, he's lusting over this and he wants to wear it, right? But this is so heavy, and I can't, the last time I put this on, I struggled to get out of it, right? And Richard, I think, were you there, Richard, when I tried to put this on? Right, anyway, this is so heavy. The point is, you think that this technology was available in medieval Britain. But the fact of the matter is, this same technology is the same technology that was devised by our Iron Age ancestors, right? But we don't give our Iron Age ancestors in Britain enough credit, right? But look at that there. It's a massive thing. Now, the point is, right? The point is, if we get back to this, right? I think I must be on something tonight. I've got to be. It's on life, right? What's that?
I think you need a tablet.
Yeah, I think I do. I think I do. I think I do. Anyway, the point is, this double link chain, that is the same technology from there, which was produced 1,000 years. Please do not 1,000 years before we get iron chainmail in the medieval period. But look how adaptable and advanced these people were to be able to create something as amazing as this, which is that. Right, we find this stuff across the site. These people are making these things, right? And whenever we find that type of technology, we always say it's the Roman technology, but it's not. It's Iron Age technology. Can you see the point I'm trying to make? Why there's this sort of there's this movement out there, right? Which probably you guys haven't heard of, right? And you're starting to think, well, actually, we need to doubt some of this stuff. The thing is, there wasn't a lot. There wasn't many Romans in Britain, right? About 100 years AD, somewhere around 200 years AD 200, right? The total population of the British Isles, including Ireland, the Isle of Man, Scotland, Shetland, Orkney, the total maximum population, possibly anywhere, anything, was 7 million maximum, everything. And out of those 7 million people, if you want to take it back 100 years, right, to AD 100, there was probably no more than 5% of the population of people that were actually Roman. 5%. Right. So those people are going to be soldiers, they're going to be traders, they're going to be they're going to be administrators. So who's producing these things? It's going to be the local people, not the Roman administrators. And the Romans weren't given these people the technology. They already had the technology there to produce this stuff, right? So chain links is great. A bronze chain link, and actually the Romans are making this in iron, right? But these are still with us today, right? So again, it is this telling us something that we didn't really hitherto know, right? There used to be somebody that is no longer with us. Ross Broadstock. He helped us save the tower that we've now got at Cowbridge, and he basically saying, right, you're wrong about your beliefs about the Romans, but now we understand what he was talking about, right? And when he was saying, well, I was wrong, if he had looked a little bit further, I might now understand what he was on about, right? Because we now need to look at what was available at the time. So before we have our break, right? What I wanted to do, back to this thing that Goff gave us earlier on, right? Basically, this entire landscape here, all these sort of humps and bumps are the tops of temples and plazas and roadways and canals and a landscape that was available to our Mayan ancestors. And one thing I'd like to mention is not everything on here is from the Mayan world, right? Some of the stuff, for example, might actually be from the modern world, right? Because LIDAR doesn't differentiate between old and new, right? But that is definitely a plaza there. That is definitely a temple, and all this wonderful stuff that is actually being analyzed and we understand from this wonderful world that is no longer with us. Those that I'll just mention who were the Mayan people. The Mayan people existed probably from about AD 200 all the way to the time of the conquistadors. That when they met the Aztecs, which were another civilization, when the conquistadors got here under Cortez in 1521. But the point is, right, the Aztecs sided with Cortez against the start again. The Maya sided with Cortez against the ruling Aztecs, right? Basically what happened, the height of the Aztec civilization, the type of the Maya civilization went up to AD 900, right? And by about AD 1400, you've got this rise of the Aztecs, right? Which were a lot blood curdly and totally different from the Mayans, for example. So it's a developed civilization. But what we do is we find loads of these temple sites, and one of the greatest sites which was excavated by, not excavated, understood by Catherwood, and I think it was Thompson in the 1840s, was a site known as Palenque. They gave us the likes of the Mayan civilization and this wonderful site of Palenque that was associated with Pakal, for example, one of the great leaders of the Pakal, one of the greats of the Mayan world. But the Mayan civilization didn't go away, but lots of their cities were overtaken. And by the time the Aztecs are on the rise, by about the 1400s, they're in little villages. So and they're slaves to the Aztecs. So this is why they side with Cortez, and they all end up dying anyway. On that note, talking about dying and dying to say something, I know she is, right? So Anne, over to you. And by the way, Anne, Goff sent me a message on my text saying he wanted you to know that you got a beautiful blue jumper.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, don't mention it. Goffs, please don't mention it. Anything you want to say, Anne?
Um, well, it's just about development, isn't it? And well, it's been interesting because you know, we've only ever seen it. The more artifacts you find, the more artifacts, the more you understand what people were doing, and what they were making. I mean, I'd never seen the chains before, and I suppose, it was more like, oh, a bronze shield or a bronze cup or, something.
Something that was a bit more distant to us, but the stuff that we are seeing is closer to us because we understand what it is.
Yeah, and it's when you think about it, it's simple, really, isn't it? Chain.
Yes,
But it must be really hard work to make.
but nevertheless, they're creating this stuff, and that's the
Yes,
point.
yes, yes, yes. Yes, I'm all for the Iron Age before the
Good. I'm
Roman.
glad. I'm glad we've got your approval, and Goff, me and Goff are really pleased about that. And we, Goff. Talk to Goff. Anything you want to say, love?
Oh, well, you've taken us to Central America, and you've taken us to Shetland, and you've taken us to Dinis Palace. Very interesting.
It's amazing.
Oh, it's
More about your.
travelogue, isn't it?
Let him talk, you silly woman. Go on.
I'm not sure about your theory on the Romans not changing some aspects of Britain. I mean, I'd have to contest that.
Mm.
Right. They did. Yeah, I didn't say they did change lots of aspects, but there were lots of aspects that were influenced by the Iron Age people. That's what we're saying.
Right, okay, it's not the way it came up. Like your
No, no, no. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Basically, let me make that clear. Oh, right. I see. Right. Okay. Right. I see your point. Right. So, I think what. Right. Basically, if Roman civilization hadn't have come over to Britain, right, we would have still had that trade. We would have still developed like the Scandinavian people, and the Irish. Somewhere the religion of Christianity, which is in effect a Roman period religion, that got over to Ireland anyway. That would have come over to Britain. So there would have been those influences. And one thing that we do know, even though Roman civilization and they're building their cities like Eboracum, York, Londinium, London, even places like Caerwent. They build these things, but what happens as Roman era civilization breaks down into the 420s, 430s, up to the final collapse of Roman 476? Lots of those places are abandoned. They're not maintained. They're not kept up to date, and therefore the civilizations of the old Iron Age start to take over those places and localities and make them their own, right? So even though Roman civilization was influential, the influence didn't remain, and it didn't remain Rome. That is the point I want to make.
Okay, roll
So
on. Yeah, great.
yeah, so you don't have to contest anything. We're off the same hymn sheet.
Okay.
So right, talking about the same hymn sheet, Richard. Before I have my 10-minute break, which I need well deserved, and I need to get some arsenic and tablets. Right, go on, Richard. Anything you want to say?
No, I'm quite happy with what's taken place.
I'm glad you are. Don't worry, Richard. I'll put a bit more detail in it just for you, love.
Yeah.
Lovely. Right. I'm sorry, Richard. I smashed up your computer as I nicked it from your house. Right, Pat.
It was very interesting. Very interesting. I enjoyed it.
And I
Yeah.
didn't mention you once. Well done, Pat. And Henry, before we have our break, is there anything you want to say?
No, I think it's really interesting to see how far advanced they were at that stage. And
Yes.
obviously trade being a key common factor across all of these areas.
Yes. And you obviously see what I'm saying about Ireland. I know it sounds like a political thing and tongue-in-cheek thing, but the point I'm making is that Ireland didn't have these waves of Roman invasion. There was influence, but Ireland isn't a backward place today. Ireland managed to bring on many things, um, and like the likes of Shetland, and the likes of the Isle of Man. And the point I'm trying to make is we didn't really need Rome, um, and it would have just carried on anyway. That's what I'm trying to say.
No, I can see that.
So right, what we're going to do, 10-minute break. So Anne, right, you've got enough time now to go out, give your husband a big sloppy kiss. Pat can go and put the kettle on. Goff can phone his girlfriend. Richard can tell the wife off, and Henry can get another bottle of wine. We'll see you in 10 minutes.
Okay. Bye. Bye-bye.
You know where you're going, are you?
my
We
life's
can't have you
busy.
going. Do you know there's people online who watch just you? It's not about me anymore. It's you, the Anne fan club. See you in a minute.
Oh,
It's the Anne fan club. He's in love with you, Anne. It's a guy called Doc's Bollocks.
I had my dinner. That's what I was doing. Let's see.
So Anne's not back then. Somebody's written online, Anne is a goddess, and somebody said I totally agree. I just had a halloumi cheese sandwich.
Oh,
So Anne's not back then. So Anne's not back then. Somebody's written online, Anne is a goddess, and somebody said I totally agree. What the hell?
echo.
I said that without saying anything. We'll get started again. Right. Well, we can't wait all day for it. Right, let's crack on. This wouldn't be the same without Anne, I've got to be honest with you. When Goff found out that Anne was going to be doing these, he just thought he was clapping his hands. Right. So what we'll do, we'll have a quick discussion about this Roman stuff, and then we'll do the access analysis stuff, which some of you might take to or you might not. And then we'll do the bit about what you feel the Musa, you know, what you feel why they built these big rock towers, and there were some good suggestions last night. So that's what we can do tonight. So
I
okay.
just had my rice pudding.
Oh, hang on, we've already done 5 minutes without you, Anne.
Oh, sorry.
I know well, sort of. By the way, there's three people online who have said Anne is a goddess, and somebody says I totally agree.
Oh, you're you're teasing.
I'm not. It's in front of me. It says Anne is a goddess.
Which one?
Yeah, which one? It could be what's the name?
Yeah, but this is Wednesday night.
Hydra. No.
Oh, right. I see what you mean. She could be Medusa.
Medusa, that's what I meant.
You could even be Mithras. Or you
Never
could be the
mind.
god. You could be the god of all prostitutes. I don't know. Right. Anyway, look. The point I wanted to make is that you can see some of the artifacts there marked across the site of Scatness. This is some of the Roman artifacts, not all of them, and it gives you an idea that it's not all concentrated in one area, and it's concentrated over a few buildings, bits of glass, pottery, you know, iron, copper objects. And what I want us to do is I want us to see what the written word tells us, not me reading it out. Just look at the written word, and so I'll go with the text, and it's rather interesting. Sometimes the reason why I'm doing this, the other reason is that lots of Orkney and Shetland archaeologists don't believe that there's any Roman stuff ever been found in Orkney or Shetland. That's the impression that they give. When in fact, there's lots of things that have been found across these two islands, and they can't all just be accidental. So the text, the written word, here it goes, a discussion of the Roman artifacts from Old Scatness. As a matter of policy, the Roman Empire traded and forged alliances, spreading its influence far outside the imperial boundaries. Yes. Within Scotland, 3 substantial published surveys have recorded numerous Roman objects, numerous, and obviously Shetland and Orkney are part of Scotland. Such evidence of, and the furthest parts of Scotland, may I add, such evidence of Roman influence is found in brocks and wheelhouses, definitely both at the scatness site. Although these regions was never subjected to direct Roman rule and exhibits no historically defined break in the settlement sequence for the early Iron Age, what we do see is that there's Roman influence, and I think the word historically defined break. So, in other words, these people continue. They're sort of happily doing their Iron Age lives, and again, that's the point I'm trying to make. That again, if Rome never ever conquered Britain, then the Iron Age would have continued, but it would have just developed. It would have eventually been where it would have been, with or without those types of influences. And it goes on to say that intermittent contact is the model that best seems to fit communication between Atlantic Scotland and the Roman Empire. What we read by Atlantic Scotland is the furthest reaches of Scotland. But if any process resembling trade occurred, it would likely be embedded in society, with every transaction expressing some type of social relationship. I think those are really powerful words. They are powerful words. They're very interesting words. And it makes me think of those Hebridean islands on the western coast, the North Atlantic western coast. What's to be found there in the way of the Roman world? And to be honest with you, I've never looked, right, which is a bit of a shame. I should have. And it's saying that, here we go, 40% of excavated North British Iron Age sites contain Roman artifacts. So it's not just coincidence. It's not just accidental collection. They're there for a reason. It's not there because they're there. They're there for a reason. Roman material culture must therefore have been acceptable to many, if not most, Iron Age societies. And there's one point to be made there, that when we look at the Welwyn Garden finds, which near London, they've got tombs there, and Colchester. But when I say tombs, bury mounds and stuff. And before AD 43, they've got lots of Roman artifacts in them. So people thought, right, if we're not going to have Rome, boys and girls, Rome's going to come to us. We're going to trade, and we're going to get the amphora, and we're going to get the Roman Samian, and we're going to do this anyway, right? So there's going to be influence there. They're just going to be accultured by the situation around them. It is not easy to determine the significance of these objects. It's very mixed. And it goes on to say that at a time when the Brocks are no longer the significant focal point of the settlement, and a site known as Scalloway, which is another Brock site, there are Roman artifacts associated with the final stages of the Brocks, as the Brocks start to fall out of use at some of these sites in the AD 100s, when this is what's going on with Scatness as well. Roman glass, metal, and pottery recovered at Scatness. Great. It is essential to date the contents in which the Roman material is found, since it cannot now safely be assumed that Roman wheel-thrown pottery, glass, or metalwork must have reached the site before the end of the Roman period in Britain. I think you could take that one or two ways, but one thing that is saying is that this stuff is there at this site of Scatness at the same time that the Roman stuff is going on in the south, and it's not there later. For example, the glass bowl didn't end up at the Scatness site in AD 600, when at that point most of the Scatness site was abandoned. It must have got there very much earlier than that. So the suggestion that Roman material circulated much later than the Roman Iron Age, for example, as Talamons of Curio, has already been disputed. So what we're saying, they ended up there as evidences of the times that the Iron Age were folding out in the AD 100s and so on. The major obstacle to understanding the Roman material culture throughout Atlantic Scotland is the rarity of attended burials. Or what we mean by that, what we find is that there's lots of artifacts from the Roman period across these sites, 40%, these sites from the Iron Age excavated in Scotland. but we don't actually see Roman burials per se. So these artifacts are not buried with people in the main. They are in Ireland, by the way. They are in Ireland. What we get is lots of lots of burials in Ireland about the 100s, which are full of Roman artifacts. And you're thinking, what's going on here? But what is going on here? But back to the site of Scatness. For example, at Scatness, Roman objects were recovered from a midden created by multi-event depositions in the roofless remains of an earlier structure. So there's also a midden, there's a midden site at Scatness that some Roman things have actually been found in as well. And again, they've just been discarded. So it's a bit odd that, if you think about it, folks, if these were curios, then they wouldn't have ended up in a midden heap. They're tried items which no longer people need because they got other Roman objects or objects from Ireland or objects from southern England or wherever, right? It's all part of the way human society is, right? Moreover, much time may elapse between the manufacture of artifacts, their use or reuse, and their deposition as valueless remnants, in other words, no longer needed. And the one point to be said there is that so much in past societies is reused, right? If it's good, like you might get steatite, which is a type of soft stone from Shetland, which the Vikings lived, but also the Iron Age loved, and the Iron Age people loved it. If you've got a steatite bowl that somebody's taken ages to carve, it might be a bowl, therefore, that could be used for hundreds of years. Like a modern day object, if it's not broken, we keep using it, but some people might throw it away. Objects can be found in contexts of a later date than that of the objects themselves, but there are so many of these objects at the Scatness site that it does tell a very mixed picture. Several fragments of glass, more than several. You've seen more than several. Lots of glass beads, green glass. Lots of items of glass have been found in the painted glass associated with gladiatorial cups. All of these artifacts again indicate trade, indicate movement of goods, and these people wanted them. They wanted them a bit like, see what else we got you. We'll go through this a bit quicker. These people wanted them. Also, these people were able to create their own pottery, right? Except they got Roman pottery, grey turned Roman pottery being found at the site, right? Greyware found at the site. More than just one fragment, greyware. They found Roman pottery on site, right? Why have they got Roman pottery there when in fact they were perfectly capable, as we've got from lots of pottery found at Scatness? They made their own pottery, but they got a Roman greyware item, which was typically the type of thing that you might find at Vindolanda or the site of Bird Oswald on Hadrian's Wall. Pottery, we've done that. There we go. And it's saying conclusion expressed crudely, is saying a dozen Roman artifacts, a hell of a lot more than that across the site. These are a lot more. They're a lot more than just curios taking that. And this is a good point. These Roman artifacts were not necessarily held in awe by a native population, but I think it's talking about that they were significant. And it talks here, the true nature of the relationship between the site and the Roman Empire is likely to remain elusive. Nobody's coming to a conclusion. It's significant, though. But the exchange of gifts, payment of subsidies, or deliberate encouraging of native rivalries is entirely consistent with Roman behavior towards other Iron Age societies. So try and get them on board. Try and create a connection through goods. And at one point I made last night was the issue when you think about and again this glass, this finding objects of glass, which would have come from something like this. You could think of along the lines of what's happening in Vietnam in 1975. Something's just happened a minute. I've just got to get back to my pictures. If you think about Vietnam in 1975, the first thing that the Vietcong wanted to get access to was the American embassy, and they wanted to get access to places that there had been lots of American servicemen. And what did they want? The Coca-Cola machines and Coca-Cola bottles. And even though the Viet Cong absolutely hated the Americans, right, they loved the Coca-Cola. And you could think of, even though there may have been a love-hate relationship between lots of Iron Age societies around the Western Hemisphere and the Roman Empire, they still loved the goods that Rome brought, and it's a bit of hypocrisy, but they were items that they wanted, and we can clearly see that at scatness. So what we're going to do next, we're going to do we're going to do a bit of scat. We're going to do the access analysis thing, and if this isn't people's bat, then we've got the last bit where I want you to, everyone's going to have an image, and I want you to discuss what you think in regards of what you feel Brock's were used for. So let's get onto my email, and hopefully if I go to my search box and I type in the word dissertation, we can get to that quick. Not that. Oh God, you can't see that. That's a film thing. And then I gave a script from a film out the way there. So if we've got dissertation, and we go down to there, and we press on my university number, and hopefully we will get this. Right, good. So what we did last time, we looked at this document, which is my dissertation, and what we did, we looked at the site of scatness, and what we did, we went down to a site which is where the L is, slightly there. That's sort of Cirencester, a bit north of there, London. It's a site known as the Ditches, a Roman site, right? What we were doing was comparing how these people acted with the buildings that they constructed, right? And there's some really interesting things about that, which we will have a little look at in a comparison now. So if I get that back up on the screen, and we go down here, and we go to the Roman site. So this thing about scatness analysis was basically saying Iron Age buildings. You can see all the numbers there, the different bits of the rooms and subdivisions. And one thing that we see with Iron Age buildings, right, circular buildings like this, is that there is basically two doorways on this site, but there's all these rooms, right? You will see at the Roman site that we're going to quickly look at, you'll see that there's up to 12 doorways with doors, and therefore you start to see that even though this is rather complex, you could basically go anywhere within this building without coming across a door. The only doors in and out of this structure, right, is the door where the entrance is, and there's a door at the exit, and there may have been a door between 10 and 11. That's a maximum of 3 doors, but maybe there was no door between 10 and 11. There's no evidence of a door between 10 and 11, the main circular building, the other building. But within the Roman building, there's lots of doors, right? And even though the way that this is complicated, transitional zones where you're sort of standing at C1 and wondering which bit of the rooms you're going to go into next, right? There's no door stopping you, but within a Roman building there is. So let's get onto that. Let's really get onto that. So if we just scroll through this now quickly, we've done all that. We've looked at all this. That is a Brock site, and so I just get off and I'll come back in instead of scrolling down. Otherwise you go a bit dizzy. So we'll just do this, and we'll go right. These are all the Roman access analysis plans, right? And initially what you can see, right, this is the way you go into the building, right? And just focus in those black areas, right? These black areas, G, and you've got E and H, right? As you're looking at G, E, and H, those are areas that you can go into other zones, right? But going into those other zones, there's doorways, whereas that's absent in Iron Age buildings. This is a Roman building we're looking at, and the way you move around a Roman building is very, very different and controlled compared to an Iron Age building. That is key to this, the sense of circulation. And somebody said, it was Roger last night, he said, Karl, I've loved the rest of the lecture, but this end bit about access analysis, I don't really get it, and I don't really understand why we've done it. And I basically explained to him that when archaeologists are excavating, say archaeologists are excavating and they find room E, and they think, right, room E has got an indication of 4 doorways. So therefore, what is E? E is known as a transitional zone. So E must go into different other rooms, different other places, right? So the big room, room D, which is going to be the room which has got the mosaic floor, which is going to be the room that actually has the painted frescoes on the wall, you know that from somewhere from E, it leads into a room that's very important to understand the site. So it can be a very useful process for archaeologists to understand, i.e. access analysis, right? So it's not just a mathematical equation to try and work out how these things worked. And what you've got levels of access. So when you get, for example, levels of access, when you're up to when you go to E, which has got 4 doorways on it, right? Levels of access as a second level of access. To get into E, you need to go through 1 door. And then to get into D, H, and F, you've got to be in E. And then you've got different accesses into these different zones. And then D gets very complex because D is the communal zone. D is the place that has got little rooms that lead into it, and it leads directly into E, which is a corridor, right? So again, this is all communication, and actually, this is a technique that architects use as well. When they're planning a building, how many doorways do you need? Where do you put the corridor? Does the corridor access into this and that? Where do you put the stairwell in? Access analysis is how we read the modern day and age and how we read the past as well. The past is not much different from today, because we need to know where we're going in a building. Like the circular Iron Age building, you've got the hearth in the middle and you've got these little cells around, and it might be a little sort of doorway going somewhere and it goes into another bit, right? But that's really open. But the Roman buildings are not. It's a different mindset. It's a different sense of thinking. And maybe what may have been different, Goff, and I think this is an important point, if the Roman civilization hadn't completely sort of disarticulated ourselves between AD 43 and AD 476, and then we're trying to get back on our feet again, right? Maybe we would not have had the concept that we've got today with ownership. Maybe we would not have got the concept today where we need to have doorways and we need to have controlled spaces, right? Very few people live in a place like me, which actually has, do you know how many doors are in my building? We've got 1, right? Just 1 single door. In this building I built, got 1 door. Where my parents' house, they've got about 30 doorways in their house, right? So you can see what I'm talking about. It's mindset. It's all really important mindset stuff. And this is known as a gamma analysis. This is again another mathematical term, but again you can see how you would move around these buildings. But again, it's very controlled. You've got a sense. I've got a sense of claustrophobia looking at it, because if you go in from the entrance where the bottom where the first circle is and you go into the other one, right? You do have 4 different options of where you can go. You can go back out on yourself, but you can't go anywhere else. Right, you can't get into the end building without going through 1 door and going through another door, right? So these are all really important aspects and really important perspectives, right? But what happened then is the site developed. This is phase 2, right? So now look at this. It gets really much more different, right? And the controls of the building are different. So you go through G, right? And then you get access to I, for example, G to I, right? And to get anywhere else, you've got to get into I. I know it makes, I know, oh my God, this is just straightforward, bog standard school stuff, right? But you get to I, and then you've got to think, right, you've got 4 doorways. Where do you go next, right? If you compare this with a roundhouse, it's there. You don't need to decide, you just go there. But you've got now 4 options, and it's having that sense of where do you go, how do you work within this world. This is a complete alien world to the Iron Age person. This is not how Iron Age people think, right? This is how Roman era people think. Iron Age people think in a more open, stressful way. Tell you what, right? Having to open and close doors every bloody day, it would drive me mad now, to be honest with you, right? And you know, it's I actually avoid places with loads of doors, right? Because I'm used to a building with no doors except the main door. Actually, we've got 2 doors to get outside, but that's the corridor bit, right? So we just go and we go down steps and I'm outside again. But the point is that my mindset is an Iron Age mindset now in the modern age. Your minds are a Roman age mindset. Can you see what I'm saying here? It is very, very clear what I'm saying here. And even though this looks very complex and sort of distant to maybe our thinking, right, it actually makes a lot of sense, right? So one second before you say anything, 1 sec. So now you've got 4 transitional zones. It's almost as if you've got like a walkway G, that's like a transitional zone. You've got to get into I, that's transitional zone, E transitional zone, and H transitional zone. And you're looking at D and you're thinking, why isn't D a transitional zone? Because it's a communal zone. That's the zone that you're all aiming towards. But to get to D, you've either got to go through doorway at E and D, right? And there's no direct access from D to H, if you noticed. You're controlled to get to D via E or I. And there's something in the way there between A and D, the communal zone D, right? You've got B, and that's a special room, which is probably a room that is like a kitchen room that, you know, not everybody's going to go in anyway. You can't really go from A to D because there's a room in the way that's clearly different from the rest, right? And again, this is why archaeologists look at these things, and it helps us think how this whole thing worked and how the building carried and flowed, right? And this again is a very like spidery. This is our gamma access plan into these buildings, and again flowing around. So the conclusion you can make from all of this access analysis stuff, the great conclusion that we can actually make is that whereas, and I'm sure you will agree if you're presented with a building like this, whereas this looks extremely complex, it's not. It's quite easy to work out because everything displays itself in front of you. When you've got a door, you don't know what's beyond that door because there's not going to be there's not going to be glass. You know, to be able to see, it's unlikely they're going to have doors with a pane of glass on it so you can see what's in there, right? When you've got a door, you don't know what's behind it. I don't know if any of you are fans of the Matrix films, right? I am, right, with Keanu Reeves, right? And he goes down a corridor, right, and there's like 10 doors here and there's 10 doors there. If he goes through one of these doors, he's going to live, right? If he goes through any of the other ones, he's going to die, right? And it's very menacing. It's very, your mind is thinking, which door do I go through? But when you're in an Iron Age building, you don't have to make that decision or choice. Your minds are a lot easier to think and work, right? When you don't have silly things like doorways to think about. It might sound daft, but it's not. These Iron Age people, you can clearly see now, thought very different from us because of their surroundings. And that is a very important point. where Roman people, you guys think closer to Roman people, because you live in a Roman type house. Yes. The one thing to be said about Roman buildings, is that they are, they're so close to us in time. Roman buildings, for example, had stairs, right? They actually had stairwells, right? And you're thinking, we've got stairs as well, right? It's just that this building is probably a single story building. Um, even though the likes of a Broch had stairs, right? The most of the buildings, the scatness, didn't, because they didn't need them. They didn't need stairs. So in a way, when you think about Roman era Britain, there's lots more stairs, right? There's lots more ways in construction that are different from, for example, Iron Age construction. And one thing that springs to mind, and we're going to look now at those Broch buildings, right? One thing that springs to mind is that these people did have the ability to mix mortar, right? They were certainly aware of lime, right? I think, I don't know who was doing it, but a friend of mine sent me an email saying, we've got evidence now of lime kilns in the Iron Age, right? So if they've got access to lime in the Iron Age, right, then they could mix mortar in the Iron Age. Do you see where I'm going with this, right? But they chose not to use mortar to build their buildings with, or that we've got evidence of so far, right? So they chose to use a dry stone wall building technique when they could have equally have used a mortar stone building technique. They chose not to do that, even though they had the technology to do so. Why is that? Right? Why is that? They know something about dry stone wall building that we don't know today. I don't have the answer, right? But as we're starting to understand the Iron Age, it's a lot more complex and a lot more aggressive on our minds than meets the eye. Bit similar to when we look at a Roman building. These buildings are very aggressive. So everyone's gonna be given a photograph of the of the Brocha Musa, right? I've got a little cat crying at the door, my Marley, right? So I'm gonna have to let him in, right? So what we're gonna do, we're gonna start off with, do you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna start off with Anne, and everyone who reckons that they know what Brochs were for have to come up with an answer that the previous person hasn't said. So say somebody says Brochs were constructed to keep lollipops in. Well, the next person can't say Brochs were constructed to keep lollipops, right? Chinese whispers, you've got to come up with something else. And why have you got these massively tall structures in Caithness, Orkney and Shetland, right, which can be up to 15 meters tall? What is the point? Why are they so tall? They don't need to build them so tall. Why are they there? And give me an answer. Everyone else is going to be asked the same thing. So come up with your answers now.
I just think it's a communal thing where people go for safety.
Right. Okay. You said two things there, right? Which is fine. And by the way, you guys can say more than one thing, but you can't repeat what somebody else has said, right? So the interesting thing, Anne, you said something very sensible, because me and Pat were together hand in hand on Orkney, and we met a guy called Martin Carruthers, who said that Brochs, he believes, were constructed for the community, right? They were community centres, and it sounded very strange. But Anne also said they were built for the community and they were built for safety, right?
Mm.
So, and now we've got to see what else. Who am I going to pick on next? I know, Richard, you're after Goth. So next is Goth. Goth. This is all of these are the Broch and Musa. It's the same building, right? It's standing 13 meters tall today. It was probably originally 15 meters. It's overlooking the sea here. It would have had a small village around it as well. No evidence of that today. But why is it? Why do they need to build them so tall? Remember, Goth, right? If you live back then, these in just before the Romans were the tallest stone-built structures people in Iron Age Britain, or people in prehistoric Britain, excluding Silbury Hill and Marlborough Mount, that ever constructed. Why? And they're dry stone.
A vanity project. My Brock Tower is bigger than your Brock Tower.
You know what? I'm not going to knock you down, and I'm not going to deconstruct what you've said. And it might be sensible for you to say a vanity project, because what else did they do in the Iron Age? Look at Maiden Castle, Goth, right? It's banks and ditches that are so massively tall and whatever. And they were so tall that it makes them undefensible because you need and the gateways. Yeah, I've said that those banks and ditch the hill fort structures across Britain, all 5,000 of them, lots of them are vanity projects. I've said that, so I'm gonna we're gonna that's good. I'm happy with that. Right, we're all happy with these answers because so far all of these things that you're saying might be correct for one Brock, and one Brock down the road has another reason. Maybe the Brock down the road isn't building it as a vanity project. They're building it for the reason Anne said. Right, now it's going to get harder. Richard, there's the scale. Go, Rich.
Intimidating to anyone who's thinking of attacking.
Mhm.
Now, is that the same as defense? It's not, is it? So it's slightly different from what Anne said. So we're going to allow that as your answer. And they do look intimidating. When you're approaching this from the sea, Richard, it comes from nowhere. Well, it did, and Richard, it doesn't come from nowhere, right? You can see it. You're approaching it, and it gets bigger and it's blacker and backer and taller as you're approaching it. It's the same as going across land. Where we stayed with this wonderful woman who'd never ever seen a pot noodle in her life, we introduced her to pot noodles, which I'm sorry to say. We were in the top of a house, and we'd have like a dormer window, and we could see over to this building. Richard, I didn't feel it looked intimidating, right? But you are right. But actually, we'll allow that answer as well as being perfectly on the nail. Right.
I'll tell
Okay,
you another
then.
thing as well.
All right, Anne said to go for it.
Have you ever been to Jersey and Guernsey?
I have been to Jersey. I went to the big castle in the bay there, but the one that's on an island. But I've been to Jersey once. Yeah.
So when you come round Jersey, round the west coast, and come round,
Yeah.
you've got all the big German defences,
Oh,
and they're
yeah.
all big, tall gun positions, but they don't
Albert
really need
Spears.
to be as tall as what they are.
They don't.
Yeah,
What is your point, though?
well, it's the same thing. It's intimidating.
That's what Albert Speer wanted when
Thinking we're gonna attack these people, or we're gonna go down the road where they're all just camping on the beach.
we're going to go down the road, and actually we're just going to camp on the beach, Richard. I'm not going to bother, right? Is it fair for me to say something? And I hope Pat and thank you for that, Richard. I hope Pat and Henry is not thinking this, but I'm thinking, as somebody said online now, the dodgy git who also fancies you, Anne, they said they're missing the lightning rods through them, right? So, but there is one thing as well, is I don't know of a single one of these that's been hit by lightning. I've not seen a single reference to any of these buildings being damaged by lightning, and I think that's very, very odd, because when we Pat was there again. When we went to the Ring of Brodgar with Martin Carruthers, he showed us a stone that in the 1947, I think it was, one of the stones had been hit by lightning, and half of the stone had been sliced through by lightning, right? But none of these buildings have been hit by lightning, and that is odd. That's not really an answer. It's just an observation. Right. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to be fair to Pat to get her next, because I'm sure Henry has come up with something else. So go on, Pat. You can't repeat anything that you've heard.
Well, sense of community, togetherness, warmth, dry. Yeah, nice place to stay.
Oh, I like it. Togetherness, warm place, dry community, nice place. And you know what? That is one thing. Everything that everybody said, it's menacing, it's protection, it's for community. It's all of these things, right? And you're just thinking, well, mine's bigger than yours. Yeah, I remembered yours, Goff, eventually. Mine's bigger than yours. But when there's so many of these being built, right, all of these things that you've mentioned may be relevant. They might be all of these things. Somebody's mentioned here, right? They've said, why would it hit the building if ducted down a conduit, right? And I'm not really sure what that means, and I'm not really sure how lightning exactly works, but there is something about these buildings, and also, Pat, right? This is another point. If you're going to go into a building, right, and you don't want to be in the middle of a field and there's lightning and you're protected by this building, that says something else as well. So something about these buildings that I don't know much about lightning, as you can tell. If you can help me with that, why lightning wouldn't hit this building, right? But this is a really good stuff. And then finally, right, last but not least, that's the image that I think that's our scatness one. That's the image that Goff. That looks very menacing, right? You're approaching that in the boat. It looks very menacing. And also, there is one thing there, that birds actually live in these buildings as well. They actually live in the dry stone wall of the buildings. Now, finally, Henry, your turn.
Right, off the wall one.
You can say 10 things if you want, but please don't, because Pat's got to go to sleep.
Yeah, the home of your mythical giant.
Oh.
Which one?
Each area has its own giant, so that protects everyone.
Yeah.
But the mythical giant.
Oh, everyone has a giant.
Oh my God! You that's a curveball. I got to allow it. But no, I can't answer. Right, you've got to give us more than that. But other than the giant, but I've got to say that that's allowed, right? Because we all build these things because we're afraid of a mythical giant, right? But there is one thing I'm going to come back at you, which I haven't done with everybody else, is why aren't they building these in Kent? Are you saying there's no giants in Kent?
There's lots of myths up in the Scottish Islands of giants throwing things, and also in Northern Ireland throwing things at each other.
Yeah.
So a particular tribe or group would have their own giant.
I don't know what to say. I really don't. I can't. Oh, come on. Can you give me something else? Give me another reason.
I would go down like a community location which is dry, warm, and vented, because obviously all the smoke and everything would go up through this building.
You nearly. I could have nearly said that. Pat said that, but you did actually say vented. You actually gave another reason. Obviously, smoke can echo out of you. It can just blow away. That's very, very practical. Like basically like the reverse of a cooling tower, except it looks like a cooling tower. It acts like a cooling tower. And somebody said actually in a way with what you said, these buildings are going to be incredibly warm, and actually. when you go into this building, right, you forget about the fact that it's bloody freezing cold outside and the wind is blowing because you're not affected by it at all.
Mm.
And there is another thing. In Orkney, as Pat experienced with me, they've got horizontal rain, right? Well, it's not going to affect this building either. So, well, I know this is in Shetland, it's somewhere else, but you've got all those aspects. As somebody said, the last giant was trick as too powerful for any side, so they killed it together as they rebelled. I don't know what that means. So it's a lazy house then. Yeah, it's a place that you go to. Yeah, that's what somebody's saying. It's a lazy house. It's a place to chill out. And the thing is, right, um, today, like in the past, right, you can have hard days and things can be very difficult. And the best thing to do is go inside and just chill out and sit around a fire or just pop yourself in bed. And if this is what these people did in the Iron Age in the winter months, then all the best of luck to them. And this would be big enough for the community to live in.
Yeah.
And I think everything that everybody said tonight is actually, you guys said a few things different from people last night. I can't remember which and where, but I think that's a really, really good way of looking at these blocks. And if anyone wants to check anything else in, do so whilst I get on to asking if there's any other questions. Right, let's see if there's anything else anyone wants to say. That was a nice little exercise. I like that. I knew it would work. I was thinking of that. Whoa, it's going to work. Yeah, good. Right, anything you want to say, Richie, babes?
The only bit you're on about using lime mortar and everything, why they didn't use it.
Go
And I
on.
think a lot of it is sort of lime mortar takes a long time to harden. It's not like cement. It takes a long time, and if you're in such a wet atmosphere,
Yeah.
it's not going to last 5 minutes.
No.
And there is another point, Richard. I've just made the academic mistake that they would not have had access to lime in places like Shetland because there is no limestone. And yeah, but Richard has a good point. And the Romans used it, but the Romans also used cement. So you've got that. There is a juggle, but away from what Richard said, they did have the technology to make lime mortar, and that is the point. Because there are lime kilns in the Iron Age.
Mhm.
Anyway, thanks for that, Rich. But go on, Pat. Pat. Oh, flip.
Yes.
You didn't even sleep.
Just a little snooze.
Go on, Pat. Just a little snooze. Well, you did actually make your contribution, so you didn't really want to listen to Richard. That's a shame, Rich. Anything you want to say, Pat?
No. Thank you.
Okay. And what about you, Anne?
Well, I suppose it's to do with the roundness, round houses, round blocks, round dry stone walling.
Yeah.
It goes round corners, but the Romans, they needed cement perhaps because I don't know, what did they use? Bricks or what?
Well, the Romans used everything. They had wattle and daub structures. They had everything.
Yeah.
The technology is out there, and if you go down to, for example, Wiltshire, you can make a wall out of mud and just put a thatch on it, cob walls, and some of them are 400-500 years old. So,
Well, yeah, but it's just it's the difference between us, the Romans
yeah,
and the Iron Age.
Yeah, exactly. The thinking, there's different thinking. And Richard's point is that the Romans may have used lime mortar because they've got a different way of building. The Iron Age people didn't use lime mortar because they've got a different way of building.
Yeah, yeah.
That
And
is
it
the
was
point. Different way of
successful, and
thinking.
it was successful.
All of it was successful.
Yeah.
And the other thing as well is a lime building like the Dover Roman lighthouse, 12.5 meters high today, and the Broch, this dry stone Broch in Mousa, which is 13 meters high today. This gets the award today. Both technologies worked, right? But these are completely different technologies at odds with each other. They really, really are. Yes, we like that. Thank you for that, Anne. And in a way, a Broch is like a lighthouse. And but Brochs are not always along the coast. They're inland, so they can't all be lighthouses. Other than the fact that if you go to Cumbria, at a place known as Ulverston, there's actually a lighthouse inland, which is really weird. Right. Okay. Quickly, anything you want to say, Goff?
Oh, it was very good. Thanks very much.
Okay. And if anyone knows Ulverston, it's the place of Laurel and Hardy. I think. Right. Anything from you, Henry?
No, that was very good. Thank you.
Good. And by the way, Anne, this guy online wants your phone number, so I'll give it to you. I'll give it to him later on. Hopefully we'll. That's been a really good one tonight. I know it's a few minutes later finishing tonight, but that's fine. Anyone else want to say anything else?
Yeah, good night.
I'll say one thing. Golf, thank you for sending the money over this month, and you, Anne, and you, Henry. And other than that, I really appreciate your support, and it's been a blast. I'll take some more tablets for next week, and no doubt I'll see you all next week on Wednesday. Night, Golf.
Bye.
Henry and Richard, and guys, stay on YouTube, and we'll have a quick chat.
Have a good week.
I will. And don't forget to give my love to Alice Roberts.
She's got a spade for you.
I tell her I'd like a ride on the back of a bike with her leathers.
Okay, Pat.
Okay, bye.
Yeah.
Bye, Henry. Bye, Pat. Bye, Anne.
Trying to figure out how to get out.
I'm gonna stay on.
I don't know how to get off
YouTube for a little bit. I gotta be on YouTube for a little bit. Anyway, night, girls.
Here we are. Bye.
Night, Pat. Night.
Here we are. Leave meeting.
Thank you. Night, Pat. That's it. Press the end thing in the top corner. It's red.
It's down here. I'm pushing it. It gives me a leave meeting. I go to leave.
It's red.
It's red.
Yes, it's red.
Won't let me leave.
Oh, don't worry. You can stay online. I go chat to people on YouTube. I go chat to people on YouTube.
I don't know. Don't know what to do.
Oh, don't worry. I go chat to people on YouTube anyway. No, Pat.
Okay, you can put me off. Turn me off.
Well, I'm just gonna keep talking. I'm gonna do some other stuff on you now as well.
Oh,
So somebody said they got Mpox.
X. I can do an X. Leave meeting.
Right. So guys, so my usual students go, guys, can we get up to 10 people on YouTube now? I don't know what people think about these Brochs. Hopefully you listen to that thing about the Broch. What do you guys think about Brochs? They are amazing, brilliant bloody structures, right? And I tell you what, when you think about it, when you think about people going on about Roman era Britain, and at the same time you've got these wonderful Brochs standing, towering in Shetland, and Orkney at Caithness in Scotland. And they're amazing things. They really, really are. And Dodgy Git, you are still there. Do you know what, right? We've got people online, right? And you know, nobody's saying anything. How many people have we got liked? How many people? We got 2 people liked, and we had 8 people on a few minutes ago, right? And only 2 people have liked. You know, miserable sods, right? I hope you put it on there, Dodgy Git, as well. Dodgy Git, what do you think about towers? Towers on the alleyways and do. That's good. Oh, so yeah, I'm gonna get a Roman video on now, right? On my not a Roman video. I'm gonna get a King Arthur. I'm gonna get a King Arthur thing on, right? And yeah, I got to put my OCD thing on as well. So that's what I'm going to do. And let's just double check I can do that. Do you know what? I got to turn my computer off and on to get something on. Everyone's going now, so all right then. What I'll do, I'll say good night to everybody on YouTube. Anyway, thank you, Dodgy Git, for coming on. Right? I don't know why you call yourself the Dodgy Git Show. Right? And bye bye everyone. Thank TTFN GD Job. And you don't forget to check out The Land of Chemicals and Pillars of the Past. Is that the same as The Land of Make Believe? The Land of Make Believe. Da, 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 we're the ones. La 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 la. By the way, this balloon, right? What character is this then? The one who gets this. What character is this in Doctor Who? Can you remember? Can anyone remember? Remember? They were friends of Doctor Who. It's the Ood. They had a little bit of a light thing, which is like was it their brain? Their brain was like in a thing, and they carried it around. They were called the Ood in Doctor Who. Well, naturally, as we know, Doctor Who is an archaeologist, right? I don't know what bloody university he went to. The University of Gallifrey, I think. Amazing, isn't it? Doctor Who being an archaeologist. Archaeologist, he must be from Cherry Farms Park. Right. Oh, I think everyone's going. Anyway, folks, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm going to go now, and many thanks. And if anyone wants to put a super on there, press the dollar mark, and you could chuck some money over, and maybe I could buy a new hat, or a new blow up rubber doll. I don't know, something like that. So there we go. We're going to finish in the chat. So good night, everybody. Diolch yn fawr chi, gwelwch chi eto, and thanks for watching online. There's nothing in the chat box on 1. There's nothing in the chat box on 2. And there's nothing in the chat box on 3.